My hands shook as I clenched the doorknob tighter. After a moment, curiosity clawed at me. What if it was just my imagination? I stepped quietly into the hallway, hoping to prove to myself that I could handle this. The dim light from the exit sign flickered, casting strange shadows on the walls. The floor felt cold beneath my bare feet. I hesitated, listening intently. The footsteps had stopped, but that didn't mean I was alone. I took a cautious step forward, peeking around the corner. The hallway stretched out, dark and narrow, with doors lining either side. I felt vulnerable. I could feel my pulse in my throat. I moved slowly, inching towards the end of the hall. As I reached the first door, I paused. It was slightly ajar. My breath caught in my chest. I wanted to look inside, but fear glued my feet to the floor. Instead, I pressed my ear against the cold wood. Nothing. It felt like ages before I pulled away. Just a few more steps to the end of the hall. I needed to know if someone was in the building, or if my mind was playing tricks on me. I edged closer to the last door. It loomed like a dark secret, and I could almost feel its weight. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from behind the door. I jumped back, heart racing. I had to fight the urge to run. My instinct screamed at me to get back inside my apartment and lock the door. But I was drawn in by the unknown. I glanced back at my door, tempted by the safety it promised, but I couldn't shake the sense that something was waiting for me. I took a deep breath and pressed down on the knob. It turned easily. I flung the door open and peered inside. The room was pitch black. I fumbled for the light switch, but my fingers trembled. What if something was hiding in there? Instead, I stepped back into the hall, deciding to search the rest of the building, hoping the footsteps and bangs were simply a figment of my fatigue. I moved to the staircase, careful to stay quiet. My breathing felt loud in the stillness. I descended to the ground floor, hoping to find some sign of life. Nothing but the creaking of the old building surrounded me. As I reached the last step, I felt a chill, like ice crawling up my spine. That's when I heard it again, the distinct sound of heavy breathing. It wasn't coming from my own chest. My stomach dropped. I turned slowly, scanning the darkness behind me. I was sure I wasn't alone anymore. Then I caught a glimpse of something moving just around the corner at the far end of the hall. I squinted into the shadows, heart racing. That's when I saw it, eyes glinting back at me, watching. My heart thundered in my chest as I stood frozen, staring at those glimmering eyes. They were low to the ground, just out of reach of the dim light. A wave of fear rushed over me, gripping my throat like a vice. I wanted to scream, but all that escaped was a shaky breath. I took a step back, heels pressing against the cold metal of the staircase railing. The movement seemed to trigger something in the darkness. The eyes narrowed, and I could almost feel them sizing me up. I wanted to flee, to sprint up the stairs and barricade myself in my apartment, but I was rooted to the spot. "Hello," I croaked, my voice sounding weak even to my own ears. The eyes didn't blink. They just continued to watch me, unblinking and steady. A low, guttural sound filled the hallway, breaking the silence. I couldn't tell if it was a growl or something darker. Panic surged in me like a tide, and I turned to run. I bolted back up the staircase, barely registering the steps beneath me. I didn't dare look back. I burst through the door to my apartment, slamming it shut behind me. My hands shook so violently that the keys jingled like a small bell. Breathless and trembling, I fumbled to lock the door. I pressed my back against the cool wood, sliding down until I was sitting on the floor. My mind raced. What had I seen? Did I really just encounter something sinister, or was my imagination running wild? I tried to tell myself it could have been a stray animal or a trick of the light. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. There was something out there, something that had clearly taken an interest in me. I crawled to the window and peered out through the slats of the blinds. The street below was empty, but every shadow felt alive, lurking. I took a shaky breath, trying to calm the fire of fear burning within me. I told myself I had to be logical. I should call someone. But who? The thought of waking up my neighbors felt absurd. They would think I was crazy. Then I remembered the landlord. He'd lived here for years. Maybe he would know if there were any break-ins or strange occurrences. It was worth a shot. I grabbed my phone, hands trembling. The screen illuminated the room, bright enough to momentarily distract me from my dread. I dialed the landlord's number, heart racing as it rang. What would I say? Hey, is there something out there waiting for me in the shadows? Just then, as I waited for him to pick up, I heard the unmistakable sound of nails scratching against the door. I froze, my breath stopping in my throat. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to think about what was on the other side. The scratching continued, slow and deliberate. I dropped the phone, clenching my fists. Every instinct told me to stay quiet, to hide. The sound stopped abruptly, shifting to a slow, soft thud that resonated against my door. I froze in place, barely breathing. In that moment, I realized the eyes in the hall might not have been a threat. They could have been a warning. The thuds grew louder, and I felt the door tremble against its frame. I scrambled to my feet, locking my gaze on the doorknob. If it turned, I had no idea what would happen next. Then everything fell silent. I sat there in the dark, bracing myself against the door, trying not to breathe too loudly. Instead the door, trying not to breathe too loudly. Then I heard it again, a slow, deliberate tap, tap, tapping. It came from the direction of my bedroom door. I froze, torn between instincts. Part of me wanted to stay quiet, to blend into the shadows, while another part screamed at me to act. I finally sat up, rubbing my eyes. The tapping persisted, an eerie, rhythmic sound that echoed in the stillness. "Hello?" I croaked, my voice barely above a whisper. No response. My pulse thundered, each beat an urgent reminder that I had to do something. I slid out of bed, my feet grazing the cool floor. Goosebumps raked my arms as I took cautious steps toward the door, the quiet seeming to throb in my ears. Just as I reached for the doorknob, the tapping stopped. I held my breath, waiting, hoping that whoever or whatever was there might just go away. But then, clear as day, I heard a low, guttural sound, followed by an unsettling pause. I took a step back, my heart pounding. The shadows twisted into shapes that danced along the walls.
Fear gripped me again, tighter this time. I wanted to run, but my feet felt glued to the spot. "Who's there?" I tried again, louder this time. "What are you waiting for?" came the voice from the other side. It was demanding, almost mocking. My breath caught in my throat. That wasn't just any voice. It was familiar, but I couldn't place it. Panic set in again. I didn't want to let it gain control, but the memories fought their way to the forefront of my mind, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. I turned away from the door, unsure of what to do next. The footsteps resumed, heavier and more deliberate now, scraping across the wood floor. I felt an overwhelming need to escape. I glanced toward the window. The thought of climbing out sent me spiraling into a hazy mix of urgency and fear. Then the doorknob jiggled violently. It shouldn't be possible. I'd locked it. In a moment of sheer instinct, I bolted for the window. But even as I reached it, I heard a soft, almost sorrowful voice come through the door. "You can't run from me." I hesitated, caught between fear and curiosity. That voice twisted something inside me. Then fear broke through. I had to choose. Just as I pulled the window open, a brief flash of light spilled into the room, revealing a figure in the doorway. Everything inside me screamed to escape. I hadn't just opened the door to questions and answers. I had unlocked something much worse. I stumbled backward, my heart racing, as my body begged me to flee. The figure in the doorway was shrouded in shadow, but the outline was unmistakable. It had a familiar silhouette, one I had known for years, yet something felt horribly wrong. "Why are you doing this?" I blurted out, the words spilling from my mouth before I could think them through. I was scared, confused, and desperate for answers. But the figure just watched me, a twisted smile forming on its lips. "We need to talk," it said, the voice sending a chill down my spine. An echo of someone I once loved.
My eyes darted around the dimly lit basement, searching for an exit, a tool, anything that could give me an edge. Then I spotted an old toolbox bolted to the wall. I rushed over, praying it was still intact. Yanking it open, I found a rusted hammer and some nails. Not much, but it could work as a makeshift weapon. I tucked the hammer into my waistband, its weight comforting against my skin. The silence had become deafening. Had they really lost track of me? I needed to know. I approached the staircase cautiously, the dim light from my phone flickering as I climbed a few steps. The echoes of my own breathing seemed magnified as I peered up into the darkness above. From my vantage, I could see a figure moving around, the first one. It was pacing, shifting from foot to foot, as if waiting for me to make a move. I backpedaled into the basement, my hand gripping the hammer tight. "That was smart," the figure called down, its voice mocking. "But you can't hide forever." I crouched low, searching for a way out. My mind raced back to the note, "Trust no one." Did that include whoever had whispered to me? I had no clue who was friend or foe anymore. Just then, a faint noise caught my attention. I turned, and there it was again, the soft whisper coming from deeper inside the basement. My instinct screamed at me to listen. "Find me, and we can end this."
Summoning all my courage, I moved toward the sound, my light illuminating a corner covered in shadows. I typically would have turned back, fear gnawed at me, but I forced my legs forward. The whispering intensified, and I felt like I was being drawn in. "This way, we can stop them if you reach me." I pushed aside my dread, stepping into the shadows. The whisper steadied my heartbeat like a distant beacon of hope. But hope felt fragile in these circumstances. I arrived at a small room hidden behind a cupboard. It was musty and cramped. The walls were lined with what looked like tattered photographs. As I edged closer, I caught glimpses of faces I didn't recognize. They seemed hazy and familiar, like shadows of memories right at the edge of recollection. Then, everything went dark. The light from my phone flickered out, plunging me into total blackness. Panic surged through me. I fumbled in my pocket for a backup, my breath coming in quick bursts. And then I heard it, the unmistakable sound of footsteps moving quickly toward me from the stairwell. Someone was coming. I gripped the hammer tight, my grip slick with sweat. I had no choice but to confront whatever or whomever it was. Whether it was one of them, or perhaps the muted voice I had heard earlier, it didn't matter. I forced myself to focus. As my eyes adjusted to the dark, I barely caught a glimpse of a shadow looming before me. Then it spoke, a familiar rasp sending a chill down my spine. "Why did you run?" I froze. The way it echoed made my skin crawl, and I knew with certainty I wouldn't know who to trust.
The shadow stepped forward, and I barely made out a face in the dim light that still managed to filter through the basement cracks. My heart dropped. It was someone I recognized, someone from my life outside these walls. "Jess?" I whispered, hoping it was just a figment of my imagination. "Why are you hiding?" she asked, the same laugh that used to comfort me now sounding sinister. "Didn't you trust me?" "Trust you?" My voice was shaky. "You were one of them." "Was I?" She took a step closer, and I instinctively gripped the hammer tighter. "Or was I the one trying to save you?" I wanted to scream, to shout that I didn't know who to believe. The note should have warned me. Yet the whisper from earlier beckoned me. I was torn between staying hidden and confronting this ghost of my past. "Stop," I said, trying to keep her at bay. "What do you want?" "Really? You think I want to hurt you?" She laughed, but it was a hollow sound. "You can't stop them alone. If you keep running, you'll be trapped for good." "Trapped?" "Yes." Her eyes darted towards the stairwell, her demeanor shifting. "They're coming. We have to move." Before I could protest, she lunged forward, grabbing my arm with an urgency that sent shivers down my spine. The undeniable flicker of fear ignited in her eyes was almost enough for me to reconsider. Almost. "Wait!" I pulled back, my instincts screaming at me to stay away. "How do I know you're not leading me into a trap?" "Because whoever you followed is still down here," she shouted, her voice rising in panic. "You think you can handle this by yourself? You'll never make it out." In that moment, the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoed again, this time closer, more insistent. They weren't coming from the stairs. They seemed to swirl around us, multiplying until it felt like we were surrounded. "Jess, we can't stay here," I shouted, scrambling back toward the cupboard. "We need to find another way out." "Get behind me,"
she yelled, positioning herself protectively in front of me. I hesitated, still holding the hammer tightly, but there was nowhere to run. The world had contracted to this small, dimly lit room, and I felt the weight of everything pressing down. Then something shifted in the shadows. I barely registered it when a figure lunged from the dark, barreling past Jess and directly toward me. Adrenaline surged as I swung the hammer instinctively, connecting with a sickening thud. The figure stumbled, and in the brief flash of light from my dying phone, I saw him. The fear etched on his face was real. "I didn't want to hurt you," he gasped, crumpling to the floor. That's when I saw it, the glint of a knife slipping from his belt, just inches from my foot. Panic ran through me anew. I didn't have time to process what this all meant. My instincts kicked in, and I stepped back, ready for whatever came next. But Jess was still behind me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something. "Run!
"Run!" she yelled, her voice a mix of urgency and dread. "We have to go now!" As I hesitated, a dark shape emerged from the shadows behind her. I turned, my breath catching in my throat. The footsteps were back, and this time they were not alone. I couldn't afford to think any longer. An instinctive move. I pushed past Jess and sprinted for the door at the far end of the room, desperation propelling me forward. The darkness behind me roared, a pulsating force that seemed to feed off my fear. I could hear Jess yelling something, but the words were drowned out by the chaos in my head. I reached for the doorknob, my heart pounding furiously. It turned without resistance, and I stumbled through into another dimly lit hallway. My breath felt sharp in my throat. I could still hear footsteps closing in behind me, growing louder with every second. They were relentless, and the heavy silence of the basement only amplified the fear coursing through me. Light. I spotted a flicker at the end of the corridor, a faint glow that promised an exit. I ran towards it, my only goal to put as much distance as I could between me and whatever had been lurking in the darkness. "Wait!" Jess's voice echoed down the hallway, panicked, but I couldn't stop. I forced myself to push harder, the light growing brighter, and a thought flashed in my mind. Was she trying to help me or lead me back into danger? It was impossible to tell anymore. The glow became a light as I barreled into the exit. The door swung open, blinding me for a moment as I emerged into the night air. I stumbled back, breathless, the chill wrapping around me like a second skin. For a heartbeat, everything felt still. No footsteps, no shadows. But as soon as I turned back, I realized that I hadn't escaped. The door behind me slammed shut, the sound echoing in the stillness. My heart dropped. It didn't just feel like the end of a chase. It felt like closing a chapter I hadn't finished reading. I ran to the nearest streetlight, the harsh light casting long shadows. I blinked, trying to center myself, but my mind raced with questions. Was it over? What had really been in that house? The memories? The figures? Jess? A part of me felt elated, relieved to have escaped, while another part sensed that whatever I had encountered would not let me go so easily. I hesitated, debating my next move. Should I call someone? The police? Tell them what had happened? How could I explain so much without sounding insane? I fumbled for my phone, ready to dial, but then shivers ran down my spine as I caught movement in the corner of my eye. I turned slowly, my heart pounding again.
A shadowy figure stood at the far side of the street, not quite stepping into the light. It was the familiar outline of someone I once knew. Who was it? I couldn't tell, but my instinct told me they weren't done with me yet. My pulse quickened. Was it Jess, or something deeper, darker? Suddenly, a cold gust of wind whipped through the street.